Peace and blessings, everyone. Salam, shalom, and welcome to Universal God, Message of Peace. I'm Lale Tansa. This is Dr. Khalid Zaheer and Rabbi Lee Wiseman. And we're going to be continuing our discussion this week from Dr. Zaheer's perspective about the topic of who gets salvation. So a big topic, and really looking forward to what he has to say. So over to you, Dr. Zaheer.
Thank you very much. I begin in the name of the God whose mercy is profound, whose kindness is forever. What I have done in my preparation for presentation on this topic of who gets salvation, I have a few pieces, and I'll try to just put them together in the hope that they all fit into this question, which is a very specific question, but I have taken the liberty to make it appear broad and come up with a few, call them subtopics to fit into it. The first thing that I would talk about from my understanding of what the Quran says about the subject is who will not get salvation. I think that probably might help in understanding the very opposite of it. So whoever doesn't get salvation hopefully qualifies to get salvation. I am picking a certain passage from the Quran where the topic is that there are some religious people, apparently religious people, who are claiming that, no matter what they do, they are going to be successful in the next life, simply because they belong to a religious group. And the Almighty says that not at all. That's not what I have planned to do. And the truth of the matter is that whoever does wrong, and the wrong that he does overwhelms him, it just has such an impact, influence on him that he's not able to come out of it. He is going to be punished in hell, and is going to dwell therein forever. Now, this part I will deal with later. But what I want to say is that, as humans, we all have weaknesses. We all get tempted towards evil. That's how the trial of this life has been designed. But all humans have this God-given facility, inclination, propensity to feel that what they did was wrong as soon as the immediate influence effect of evil recedes. We've talked about conscience already. There is this realization that we have that what we did was wrong, and therefore it has to be corrected. But there are some unfortunate people who do wrong. They have the realization that what they're doing is wrong, and they get the opportunity of repenting, correcting themselves, expressing their regrets, telling the Almighty that they are ashamed in whatever way is available to them. But they don't do it. Instead, they continue to indulge in the evil that they are doing. And evil can obviously take different forms. And they start justifying it. And as a result, the evil then overwhelms them. They are just completely covered by it. And their then remains no possibility for them to come out of it. And this happens because of nobody else's fault, but their own undoing, their own evil way. I quite often worry as to how can it happen to a human being. But probably it's because of this reason that the Quran keeps mentioning the fact that those who do evil and keep doing it, there is an expression used in the text very often that they are harming themselves. They are being unjust to themselves. So that's one point. So, in other words, whoever does not belong to this category, whoever is aware of the fact that what she is doing is wrong and is therefore regretful and finds opportunities sooner than later to declare that what happened was wrong, to correct his wrong, and to uh, take remedial action. Uh, the person is fine. However, it seems that there are people who go as far as to never have any inclination to reform and correct. So, such are the people, it seems, that they are going to be deprived of salvation. Now, let me move on to another, hopefully, related topic, and that is uh, the question of salvation itself. What does it mean? But to be honest, what it means is nothing but the fact that you are saved from being consigned to the hell and you get the all important divine verdict in your favor that you are eligible for the heaven. Now, let me mention my understanding, very ordinary understanding of a very ordinary student, that there are going to be as many heavens and as many hells as there are human beings. So quite often it so happens that many people are not particularly convinced that this concept of the heaven and the hell is a bit too extreme. Uh, and we humans are okay, if not quite as good, we're not quite as evil as well either. That people should deserve what the divine text is mentioning. Uh, so my understanding is, and I do have reasons to believe from within the text that there are clear indications that it's not that they're just two very glaringly contradictory, uh, not contradictory, opposite, glaringly opposite uh, states, positions, or call them places of experience that have been mentioned in the ultimate divine judgment after it's declared and people are asked to move on to their ultimate fates. These are the two extremes that have been mentioned to let people know that the fate is going to be there, and try as best as you can to to be eligible for the good fate, the good ultimate uh, place of success, and avoid this extremely painful place. I mean, quite obviously, for the pharaohs, there has to be some place, and it's not going to be very pleasant. Uh, but the other thing that I understand from the Quran, this is very clear. You know, when you read the text, it's so very important that you are not doing it in a way that you are uh, isolating a text from the rest of the book, the rest of what has been mentioned. What is known as atomism. You don't, you don't, you don't reject. You don't take away a verse and start interpreting it independent of the rest of the text. So there is a very clear mention in the Quran that there is some part of the text which is allegorical. It is allegorical, it is metaphorical, because of the fact that there is no way how people could be given an understanding of what the next life is going to be like. So, I mean, if there is a description of the heaven, for example, that looks in the Quran, that looks very attractive for the Bedouin living in the hot desert of the Arabian Peninsula, don't be surprised, because they were the immediate addressees, and it was their imagination of uh, excellent life that was taken to allegorically present what this beautiful life is going to be like. But there are enough evidence to believe that there's going to be much more than that. This is not my subject right now, but I'm just trying to explain that likewise is going to be the case with the hell. That, the kind of pain, the kind of punishments that have been described, they are basically metaphorical. Only God knows what their reality is. Nobody else knows their reality. Probably it would be a good topic for another session. But there is an important, and I'm going to the third point. There is an important clarification that I think needs to be made. I am very sensitive about the idea that religious realities should be explained over and over again, reviewed and revisited, and an ongoing discussion should take place. And that is why I am enjoying these sessions as well. Because, human mind questions, and rightly so. It's one of its features. That's why the Almighty has given us this intellect. And in order to satisfy the intellect, we need to continue to understand and talk about what's there in the text, and try to find meanings more and more. And somebody, as somebody rightly mentioned that, and as and when you feel that some of the questions are not getting answered, one should not be deterred. One should place those questions in some file, which should have a title that, questions not answered as yet. Sometime later, we may find good answers to them as well. I must mention this before I answer the question. I, in some time, probably 2 decades ago, when I was in UK, there was a Christian lady who, when she was introduced, I was introduced to her as a Muslim and believer in the Quran. She mentioned very bluntly, and bluntness, I think, is different from impoliteness. And I like bluntness, because if you're blunt but not impolite, you're an honest person. I mean, you're not keeping anything with you. You're just mentioning. And goodness me, I was speechless when she said this. Probably I mentioned before that I I cannot accept a book that says that God is merciful and kind, and yet he is going to consign some people into a burning fire to roast there for eternity. And I used to think of myself as somebody who could come up with some answers, some explanation. And my goodness, lo and behold, I was there speechless, looking at that lady. I said, "Well, okay, fine, yeah, you have a point." And then I you know kept on reading the text, and I found a verse which to me gives a very clear indication that uh, this mention of eternity actually has a context. Uh, it is not eternity in the literal sense that people quite often think of. Uh, I'm not talking about the paradise or the heaven, I'm talking about the hell. Uh, the mention goes something like this, that they're going to be consigned to the hell, and they're going to live therein forever, for as long as the heavens and the earth would last, except for what your God is going to decide, is going to will. Now, to me, it's pretty much clear that what it means is there's a slightly different mention about the heaven. This is not my subject, but what I'm trying to say is that what I gathered from this mention is that the Almighty is going to punish some people who never ever bothered to reform themselves, uh, and they will get punishment appropriate, commensurate with the evil that they committed. And when the punishment will be over, will have done its task, then the project is going to be over and it's going to be finished. Now, obviously, the question that would arise is that um, then why is eternity mentioned then? Well, the answer is, and this is the answer that I kept on giving to my students who were doing their graduation, and they had 8 semesters. And I told them that, look here, if I am teaching you a subject in the first semester and somebody misbehaves, and I tell him that, look here, I'm going to report it to the administration, and I'm going to request them that for the misbehavior that you've demonstrated, you should be given a punishment forever, such and such punishment. Now, this forever means for 8 semesters, for as long as you are here. So that's another thing that I wanted to mention. Now there is a third subject, and might keep wondering, how are they related? But I mean, I'm trying to convince myself that they are related. The third subject, is it the third? Yeah, it's the fourth one. Is that um, why is it that there are many uh, religious people and in all traditions who are exclusivists, who would say that we are right and we are going to get salvation and nobody else. Why is it so? Well, the answer that comes to my mind is that, and again reading the text carefully, is that what I have been mentioning over and over again, that when prophets come to a certain society and they deliver the message, those who come into contact with him, uh, sooner or later, they've no choice but to accept him. When I say no choice, it's not uh, something that is forced upon them. The reality, the truth, becomes so clear that they accept it. And those who are evil, as 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 evil as I mentioned in the very first point, that they don't bother to get rid of the evil that they are surrounded by because of their own evil ways, they they don't get attracted. They reject. Now, when this tradition moves on and the prophet passes away, the believers in that message, they start repeating the same understanding. That is, uh, those who believe in him are the ones who are going to succeed, and those who do not believe in him are going to fail, are going to be doomed, not realizing that the man is not there anymore. So the message is not quite as clear as it was when he was himself physically present, drawing the attention of people towards the message. So this inability, lack of appreciation on the part of those who have been, a part of the tradition in the later times, in the later generations, they continue to say that this is the truth. This is the only truth. Anybody who belongs to this group is the one who is going to succeed and have salvation. All others are doomed. So I think that's what the problem is. And that brings me to the fifth point, the fifth, hopefully connected point. But if somebody says, no, it's got no relationship whatsoever with your topic, well, I'll accept the criticism. Uh, what I believe is that, I'm now talking about the Quranic text. It keeps saying over and over again about salvation, that it's only those people who will get salvation who believe and do good deeds. Now, you know, people who read the Quran, for instance, they would say that those who believe in what has been presented as belief, and those who do good deeds, which is in accordance with what the text says, uh, which is fine, as I said, when it comes to the times when this presentation was made in a way that it was very clear that the presentation is coming from the creator, and not accepting it was rejecting God and his message. But as time moves on, people are less and less uh, convinced because of the fact that it's not getting presented properly. I mean, honestly, I'm telling you, you listen to uh, religious scholars, howsoever impressive they are, but there's always something lacking, something missing, uh, which can cause an honest person to feel that, well, you know what, I'm not fully convinced, without being arrogant, without being rigid or biased. Uh, in the case of prophets, you know, the way things progress, there comes a time in their mission that it's black and white. It's absolutely clear. Uh, so what I'm saying is that if you were to if you were to deduce a general principle, uh, which can be generalized to all times, uh, it really boils down to two conditions for salvation based on the same statement: those who believe and those who good deeds. But as I've been saying over and over again, I would paraphrase these two statements by mentioning that those who believe means those who are intellectually honest.
Mm.
An intellectually honest person would not reject any truth coming to him uh, because he's biased or because he's arrogant. He will always submit. He's humble. He's always prepared to listen to the other point of view. If if the truth of religion has not been presented to an intellectually honest person in a way that has actually impressed him to accept it, it's not his fault. And obviously, who is going to decide?
Mm.
It's only the Almighty is going to decide, who knows everything. And he is the one who will ultimately, uh, you know, give his verdicts. And those who good deeds are the people who are morally upright, are the ones who follow all the moral, ethical norms that are known to all humans. And obviously, if they come in touch with a religious message from God, the same moral principles are emphasized more strongly, and their extension to certain other aspects of life in the form of law, which we call Sharia, is also provided in a way that it begins to make sense. But if it doesn't make sense, which I can appreciate and understand, it does not. In the case of many people now, for instance, in the case of Islam, is that the law of the Almighty is in the hands of people who say in the name of God's message many things which are not his message. I mean, probably again, uh, I would not want to say anything more because then I'll deprive ourselves of other good topics. So let it remain confined to this statement that those who believe and those who do good deeds are the ones who are intellectually honest and are morally upright. Finally, this is probably an unrelated point, but I must make it, which is, this quite often this question is asked by good, well meaning people. And I think they have a right to ask this question. They say that, I mean, all this mention of salvation and belief and good deeds and the trial of this life with with consequences that are going to be lasting, or if not lasting, would last for a very long time. Why? Why were you not consulted? I mean, my approval should have been taken before I was to embark upon this journey. So much at stake. Uh, if what you're saying is right, then I should have opted for it. So it's something that quite often is mentioned by people who are not impressed by religion. To me, the answer seems to be, well, probably it's two it's two different aspects. One, one answer is what doesn't impress people, but I still say it very clearly, and I try to look confident because I am confident that you know what, you were actually asked and
Mm.
you gave your approval, but the permission that you gave, it has been erased from your memory.
Mm.
But despite the fact that the memory is not in your memory, you still behave in a way, you still behave in a way
Mm.
that it seems as if you've accepted it, uh, which is, you know, you don't believe in another life, okay? You don't believe in the paradise, in the heaven. You don't believe in the hell, and yet knowing full well that you are living a life which is going to come to an end very soon. We are vulnerable. But my goodness, look at what you're doing. You are working so hard to make your future, which is not known, as good as you can manage to. And if you realize that you're going to die while you tell yourself you're doing it for your progeny or for your nation. So, investing in a future that is going to last forever, is a part of the human personality that we are given to we are given to uh, deal with, and we always avoid a future which is problematic, painful, which has you know failure as the end result. So that's one part of the answer, that we approved it, we knew it, but because this life is a trial, this life, and therefore the Almighty has arranged for it to be removed from our memory, but our behavior nonetheless uh, is still there to confirm that we know it. The second part of the answer that I would give is that, imagine what is at stake. I mean, why are you uh, disapproving it? Why are you going against this narrative? Uh, when this whole presentation is promising you a life of exceptional beauty, contentment, and peace forever. So, what is the problem in it? What you're saying is that, but the evil consequences are very grave. But why are you even thinking about it? As a human being, you are naturally endowed with a nature that inclines you to be good. And if at all you do something wrong, as I said in the beginning point, you again, the same nature inclines you to take corrective measures, to reform, and to show your regrets. So, what are you speaking against? I mean, you should be thankful for this immensely, you know, beautiful opportunity provided to you to go through a brief life of trial, which is going to enable you to get a life of a much higher quality by just performing, behaving naturally. I think I've been too vague in whatever I've been saying, but I thought they all fit into this title of our my presentation, Who Will Get Salvation. Thank you very much for being patient.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much. That was amazing. Thank you so much, Dr. Zaheer, for sharing those really powerful points and your perspective on this topic. Rabbi Wiseman, do you have any comments about some of the points, any of the points that Dr. Zaheer has mentioned, talked about?
There's so much there. I want to start out by appreciating, because it's a very it whoever picked this topic, they should be, you know,
It was you.
they should be punished for this for sure. But um, it's a tough topic. Um, uh, I always get stuck in the first thing you say. I was very, it's a very interesting point about, kind of heaven and hell being two ends of the extreme. And I think that makes a lot more sense, in the sense that, um, you want the punishment to fit the crime, right? You want the punishment to fit the crime. You want the reward to be commensurate with what the person has done. You want it to be just, right? And justice is never, something you buy off the rack, right? It's tailor made. So the idea that justice is going to look the same, okay, everybody goes over here, it's like, God forbid, the these jails in these jails in El Salvador, right? Where everybody gets treated exactly the same, right? Everybody wears the same uniform, they sit in the same bunks, right? They don't have names, they have numbers, right? And that doesn't seem just. That doesn't make sense to me. Another thing that struck me, is the that the image of paradise is the Bedouin good life, you know, and that makes a lot of sense. That does make a lot of sense because it's a place of gardens and water and beauty, none of which are found in the Saudi Arabian desert, right, which is pretty dry, and it's a it's definitely suits that audience. I was thinking about the other side of it, and that is the image of hell as a place of fire. Um, so when I think about fire, it is true that fire, can be punishing, but fire mostly is not punishing, right? I mean, what we use fire transformatively, right? I mean, what do we use fire for? We use fire to cook every day. Okay, we take food that's raw, right, and we transform it into delectable things. We use it to make metals and glass, ceramics, all these things, right? We use fire primarily, right? Primarily to transform something from one thing into another, to change the nature of something. Now, it's a delicate, all of those are delicate, painful processes, right? If you've anybody who's ever worked, with glass, right, knows that it's not easy, right? You're working with burning hot glass. It's not easy. Um, I can't imagine if I were a glass molecule, I'm imagining I would not feel good. Um, I guess silicate. In any case, um, if I were a bar of iron being beaten into a shovel or a plowshare, I'm sure that would be a painful that would be, if I could feel it, that would be a painful situation. So I wonder sometimes and I guess this is, you know, when you say that you're going to be in these situations until such time as God says, you're not, right? Till such time as God says you're not. And that image of the fire to me sort of leads me to the conclusion of that there is a conclusion. Very rarely do we burn things just for fun, or do we burn things just to punish them, right? Normally we transform things from one thing to another. It's very unusual for us um, to just destroy things. Uh, and and it's hard to imagine that God would create these beautiful creations only to destroy them, to transform them, to change them, to fix them. That seems more reasonable to me. But I have to think about that a little more. It's kind of been it's rattling around in my head. Um, it it's interesting that when you said the woman asked you the question, I was expecting a different question. I was anticipating a different question. Um, I was expecting "I'll bet you think I'm going to hell" question, right? Or the other, or, "You're a very nice man. I'm sorry you're going to hell," which this is the question. This is a comment I get a lot, or, how does it feel going to hell? Knowing you're going to go to hell. And I always, I always say that I don't have any problem with somebody thinking I'm going to hell. I just wish you weren't so happy about it. You know, for those people for the people who are not happy about it, I think that makes me feel much better. I'm so sorry you're going to hell. That's nice. That's okay. But when people are like, "You're going to hell," I'm so excited, so great. That upsets me. Um, So I was expecting that question, but the question she asked you really is a good question. Um, especially in the Quran, where the name the merciful, right, is all over the place, begins all but one surah, I think, right? And then the the mentions of the mentions of the hellfire and so forth are so frequent, right? So frequent and so severe. That that is a good question. I like the answer, Luke. I mean, I think it's a reasonable answer. Um, and I had one more thing. Um, when it comes to my brain just turned off. I'm still half asleep, I think. Um,
I admire your ability of keeping everything in your memory. You don't even write. And
I try to I try to take notes. It comes from years of studying with my rabbi who would never let me write anything. He had a he had a rule. I wasn't allowed to write anything. And then at the end, he would ask me all sorts of questions about what it is we did. And if I didn't get it right, he would yell at me. So um, I I'm fairly good at keeping track of these things. Um, I guess the end of the day. Oh, that I remember what it was. You know, the question of what is a believer is a really interesting question, and maybe one day we'll talk about that because it's a I think there's a lot of disagreement on what it is you are, what it is you. If it's funny, there's very di little disagreement about what a person who does good deeds is. I think that almost everybody in the world knows what that is, right? I mean, we could go to the wilds of Borneo, and we could grab people out of the jungle and ask them, you know, what is a good person? And they would probably, you know, what is a good person? What are good deeds? They would probably come up with a list that would closely resemble the person in Pakistan or the person in the United States or the person in Canada or the person in the UK. But when it comes to belief, the question of of what constitutes the belief of a believer,
Mm,
um, and under what circumstances, right? Under what circumstances, uh, is I think is I think a very difficult one, you know. And you've alluded to it a couple of times. The question about, you know, well, where did the information come from? How is the, you know, where did the information come from? How was it delivered? You know, did you see the information in action? I think to me, um, what makes something what makes something believable to me is when I see the information made real in the actions of the person who's right. So a person who is wholly their message, right, is going to have a different impact than a person who is just a normal person delivering a message, right? It's just stands to reason that that's going to be different, and even, you know, even as things are, right? A teacher who's, as we say, you know, talking the talk and walking the walk is going to have a different impact than a person that's just talking the talk.
mm,
Um, And so that's something to really think about. You know, I get this a lot. I have to be truthful. I'll be very blunt. You know, I get a lot of, you know, I interact a lot with the Muslim community, and every once in a while I get somebody who just says, "Well, I don't know why I'm even bothering to talk to you. You know, you're not a believer." And I always am shocked. I mean, there's a part of me that's really shocked inside because I'm not a believer. I mean, really, you think that? You know, like I find it, and I understand from their perspective. I understand why they say that. I understand why they say that, but I also understand that it doesn't feel you know, it doesn't feel like it, it doesn't feel like it doesn't feel right to me. It doesn't make sense to me. You know, I can't sort of just say, you know, oh yeah, oh right. I don't, it doesn't strike me as right. So maybe that's a discussion sometime, you know, like what is the belief of a believer? What do you know, what does it mean, you know, to be to be a believer? Because it's very interesting. Because one of the things I've noticed, particularly in the Quran, that I don't know, did it ever say if you're a Muslim, it always says if you're a believer, right? Right? Alladina amanu, right? Those people who believe, right? So that's a you know, which doesn't which doesn't which seems not to sort of specify the conditions under which you believe, but that you believe. So in any case, that's what came to mind.
Let me say a couple of things before I hand over the mic to you for your final conclusive remarks of conclusion, as you always very uh, admirably do. Uh, you know, uh, just adding to what Rabbi Wiseman has said. Um, when I say that belief is, and I agree, we need to talk more about it. Is actually uh, intellectual honesty.
Mm.
I mean, if it is not, let's assume that it is not your intellectual honesty that is being tested. Then what exactly is the test? You know, if I imagine it from the point of view of a religious person who is emphasizing belief, probably what he's saying is that, you know, you are expected to be, I'm sorry for saying that, but you're expected to be naive and gullible and just accept what is being presented to you. I think this is lack of proper deep thinking. It's an absence of the concern that God's attributes, as have been mentioned, for example, in the Quran, and what He says uh, as principles that emerge from those attributes, they're not matching. And there is no concern, there is no worry on the part of the religious person to bring them together. To me, honestly, it's a part of the process of my belief.
Mm.
To, to satisfy my intellect and my conscience that what I understand from there, as you rightly pointed out, you know, merciful, and what is mentioned there, they have to match. If they're not matching, I'm not saying that you're not a believer, but you know, there is something lacking. So that's one thing. The other thing is that you know, when they say they're not a you're not a believer, again, you know, it's the inability to move out from one's shell, one's environment, and think about the other person as to where is he coming from, what is his background. Uh, God has made this world, designed it the way it is, that we are diverse. We are not homogeneous, and
Mm.
that's the beauty of this creation. So I think quite often, unfortunately, what happens is that the very people who are expected to market the Almighty's message properly and effectively to the rest of the mankind, they
Mm.
actually become a barrier in the way of others understanding and accepting that message. Right, Dr. Ali, over to you. It's just
Well, thank you both so much. Amazing points and amazing comments, Rabbi Wiseman. I loved what you commented about the fire being, you know, seeing it from a different perspective. And actually, you know, perhaps that could help us to understand what the lady asked you about the mercy of God and the fire, and maybe if we see it as an act of mercy, that sometimes we need a bit of pain and punishment to help us get purified and out of the current state which imprisons us. I'd like to just share with you a few ideas that inspired me from the Quran and from the scriptures of the previous scriptures, that I see humanity like a human being, like I feel like this might be a bit symbolic, I don't know, like a rock with water that's trapped inside. And human beings can be like when we I don't know how to put this into words really. I feel like what you're saying about intellectual honesty is really beautiful. And actually, I believe that what our purpose is to try to share that inner truth, as like, or that light or that water, to let it come out and flow out. So, to be true to our core essence of who we are. With by purifying our intention, our thought, our speech, our behavior, so it's all in line with that truth. And that sort of is like a light shining out, or like a water flowing from a rock, or like a tree with its roots firm in the ground and producing beautiful fruit all seasons round, and which benefits people. And these fruits I see as like attributes of our Creator, are like the ways of peace, kindness, love, mercy, forgiveness, patience, all these ways of peace, justice, gratitude, compassion. And actually, that's sort of, the more we remember who we are inside and where we came from, and remember that covenant that we might have made, before we came here, the more likely we are to be able to find that strength to do that. But what hardens our hearts, like a rock which stops the water from flowing out, or or like a murky glass which doesn't let the light through, or like a tree that gets blown away in the wind, or that doesn't stay upright and produce fruit. The things which stop that are our greed, our evil ways, as you mentioned, our greed, our envy, our ego, our lust, our pride, our arrogance. And the biggest one, I think, is arrogance. And when a truth, we naturally seek higher truth as human beings, and this truth is constantly being revealed to us each in our unique ways and paths. And it's when we consistently, defiantly disobey that or turn away from it, that's what hardens our hearts like a rock and stops that water from flowing out. That's what makes that glass murky. That's what weakens our roots and our faith. And sometimes that rock has to be crushed in order to let that water out, or sometimes we have to. The thing is that the mercy of God is obviously, if he allows evil to carry on, then you could argue that he's not being merciful to all those who are putting that effort in to follow the truth and to follow the ways of peace, because the evil will cause them to suffer. So, and when I think of the mercy of God, I remember in the Quran it talks about the chapter of the heights, Al-Raf is it, where there are people who their evil deeds and their good deeds are the same, and they wait on elevations, and once they're sort of I feel like the message there is that the mercies of God is great, and he does put them into the paradise, but they have to wait a little while. But please correct me if maybe your understanding is different, but obviously God has to be just and merciful, and he's merciful, and mercy is one of his, you know, amazing attributes that's mentioned a lot in the Quran. So, and also I think, like, I believe that God judges us according to what he's given us, from my understanding of the Quran. And, you know, it says, you know, let the Christians judge by what was given to them, and let the, you know, everybody was sent messengers and prophets, and everybody's revealed a different understanding of truth. And I think each will be judged according to what was given to them. And just like a father or mother wouldn't really punish a child for not, you know, making mistakes, and for doing something that they don't know is wrong, you know, why would God punish us if we don't intentionally do wrong? But I think human nature is that we forget, and this is the problem. So this is why I think prayer and charity and good deeds, you know, the more we do these things, the more it can help us to remember that part of us, and hopefully give us the strength to persevere and seek truth and be humble and accept a higher truth. And just one last point I'd like to mention is that about the belief. Well, I think that's a great topic to talk about. What is a believer? And again, from my understanding from the Quran, is that being a Muslim or is sort of like surrendering to the path of truth, surrendering to a higher will, but seeking truth. You have to have that intellectual honesty to constantly be seeking truth and trying to understand it. But sometimes people reject something because it doesn't make sense to them. I do think that there's a level where the faith enters the heart, where you kind of do accept a truth that you don't understand. You know, even if you don't understand it, you still believe in it, even though it doesn't make sense. Some might argue that that's the state that is lower than the intellectual honesty, but I think it can be a state that's higher as well. For example, so like somebody who's just looked at the Quran, for example, might say, well, I have doubt in my heart because this doesn't make sense to me and this doesn't make sense to me, so I reject it. Or the same with the Torah, or, you know, any scripture. But then as time goes by and through their experiences and analysis, they might come to a point of understanding where actually they feel like, no, this is definitely a revelation from our Creator. And even though there were places in there that I don't yet understand, I still accept it blindly. You know, if there's a commandment that I don't yet understand, I accept it and I do it anyway. And I hope that one day I will understand it, but I will still obey and follow that commandment. So that's just my understanding, but I would love to talk about this more with both of you in the future talk, inshallah. So yes, I think that's what I wanted to share. So I've written some points about some of the points that you mentioned. About eternity. That's really, yeah. That's really, that made me think. I'm going to reflect on what you said about that. Thank you so much, Dr. Zaheer. It's something that I've struggled with, actually. But I think in the Quran, there's a place where it says none will enter it except the most wretched, or, you know, but the concept of eternity and in a punishment for eternity, beyond understanding, I guess, isn't it really? But God knows best, and may He guide our hearts to higher levels of understanding, inshallah. Thank you both so much.
I just want to make one small statement. You know, one of the take homes of this session is the very important mention of Rabbi Wiseman of the transformative attribute of fire, which really is something that has made me think. So I'll think about it. Thank you very much.
Thank you both so much. God bless you for your efforts and your time, sharing all your wisdom and perspectives. And yeah, happy Eid, everybody, and peace and blessings. Thank you all for watching.
Thank you.
Please like, share, and subscribe. Assalamu alaikum. Bye. Bye.